So good evening, everybody. It's so wonderful to be back here at the incredible Torch University, and I wanted to share a short thought with our friends online so they can have something to think about on this coming week's Parsha before we begin our regular programming of our breakneck through the Bible, which is somewhere deep, deep, deep in the heart of Leviticus. So, this week's Parsha, as we know, is the Parsha of Bo. It's very interesting that if you want to know how many plagues were in Va'era and how many were in Bo, Bo is Bet and Aleph, which is 2 and 1, so there are 3 in this week's Parsha. And Va'era is the previous Parsha. It starts with a Vav and an Aleph, which is 6 and 1, which is 7. So there's 7 in the previous portion and 3 in this week's portion, and that makes the 10 plagues. But it's very interesting that Moshe tries to negotiate slowly with Pharaoh. We discussed this yesterday. At Musar Monday, we discussed how Moses was able to negotiate with Pharaoh to get a day off for Shabbos. But now Pharaoh is starting to crack. He's starting to crack a little bit. And we see that Pharaoh says, you know what? Give the Jewish people, he said, Pharaoh says, I let the Jewish men go, but not the women, not the children, not the cattle. What does Pharaoh say? He says, no. Vayomer Moshe, binoreinu b'zkenenu nelech. We're going to go with our young children. We're going to go with our elders. Bivonenu bivnosenu, with our boys and our girls. Bitzonenu v'karenu, with our cattle and with our sheep. We're going with lock, stock, and barrel. Everything. Everything. Pharaoh says, no way, I'm not having it. You're not going. He says, men can go. And he knows that if he keeps the women, and he keeps the children, he keeps the cattle, the men will come back. Moses says that's not an option. Not an option. We have the plague of the locusts. We have the plague of the darkness. And then we have the plague of the death of the firstborn. So I want to focus, just now that we have the background, I want to focus a little bit. By the way, after the first plague in this week's Parsha, Pharaoh relents. He says, fine, you can take the women, but not the cattle, because all of their cattle was destroyed. Moses says, no, we're taking the cattle too, right? Until Pharaoh has no more choice. But if you look at the second plague of this week, is the plague of darkness. And it wasn't just the darkness. It was a darkness where they couldn't move. They were frozen. So if they were in the middle of working the ground, the Egyptians, they were stuck like that, frozen. And if they were in the middle of eating, you can imagine, that's how they're stuck for the next 3 days. 3 days of very dense darkness, but then 3 days of so dense that they could not move. Our sages tell us what happened here. God told the Jewish people the following. Told Moshe, tell the Jewish people, when there's going to be darkness, go around all the Egyptians' homes, open their drawers, look at all the gold and silver, look at all the garments that they have. Don't take a thing. Don't take a thing. But right before we have the Exodus, where the Jewish people actually leave, and there's the death of the firstborn, then God says, now tell the Jewish people to go to the Egyptians and to get all of those gold and silver and garments. We're not going to steal it from them. They're going to give it to us. We're going to get it right through the front door. And they come to the Egyptians and they tell the Egyptians, do you have any gold and silver and garments? They're like, no, we don't have any. We know that you have in the first drawer and in the third drawer, and behind over there you're hiding some of your gold, and in that shelf over there we know that you have those garments. We'd like to have them. Oh, you're right, and they'd give it to them. They'd give it to them. You know, they say, I haven't seen this actual document, but they say that the Egyptian government sued the state of Israel for all of those possessions that were taken when the Jewish people left Egypt. So the Israeli government countersued the Egyptian government. They want 210 years of slave wages plus interest. They said, fine, keep it. You can keep the gold and silver. You can keep it. Right? But the question, and this to me is astonishing, is why does it have to be like that? Why do we have to go and look at their things, but don't take it, and later on we're going to come back and then receive it from them? Why do we have to put them in a trap, sort of like we're going to catch them? Right? Don't try to cheat me and tell me you don't have it. I know you have it.
That's why God did it.
So there's something to be said about, number one, we were going to have to get paid. There's no such thing as people just get free 210 years of slave labor. That's not going to work, right? It just doesn't. You don't humiliate a people. All of the plagues were an eye for an eye for different humiliating acts that the Egyptians made the Jewish people perform, like sweeping their homes, and go schlep me some water from the Nile. All of these different tasks the Jewish people were tasked with, and they were punished with the blood. The Nile turned into blood. They were punished with the dust turned into lice. And we mentioned this yesterday. What we need to understand is that God doesn't only care that it's done, that justice is done. It's not enough for there to be justice, but the justice needs to be executed properly. There's a right way to do it, even when you're right. Just because you're right in an argument doesn't mean you can yell, kick, and scream just because you're right. There has to be a dignified way in which we do things. It almost reminds me, it's like, there's something in sports, which I know many of you don't follow sports, right, David? Right? So there are those of you who may know there's something which is called unsportsmanlike conduct. Which is, that's not the way you act. When you get a touchdown, you don't have to stick it to them in their eyes. It's like, not only we won, we're going to show you how much we won. We're going to stick it into your eyes and turn the keys into your eyes. No need to do that. There's a right way to do it. You can win it with dignity. Win it with an elegance. And the Jewish people shouldn't have to steal it in the middle of the night. But rather, they can come, they can get what they deserve to be getting, which is payment for the 210 years of slavery, which is a very small cost, by the way, that jewelry, right? That gold and silver. But I'll tell you something very interesting that's written in the Midrash. What happened to Moses? When the Jewish people are gathering up all of these possessions, the Jewish people are gathering up, they're getting all of this riches, all of these garments. What was Moses doing then? Two things. He was getting the bones of Joseph. The bones of Joseph was buried in a sea burial by the Egyptians. They hid his body. And Moses said a certain prayer, and the bones came up to the surface of his casket. They had a metal casket, and this came up to the surface of the Nile. That was the first thing that Moses did. The second thing that Moses did is that Moses was chopping down trees, because the Jewish people were soon going to be in the desert, and they're going to need to build an ark, and they're going to need to build an altar, and they're going to need to build all of these. Where are they going to get their wood from? Well, they're in a desert. There is no wood there. So Moses already cut it down now so that they can have it when they get into the desert. So Moses didn't get any riches. So Moses, everyone's walking in with bags and bags, loads. You know how much they went? The Midrash says that the Jewish people amassed such incredible wealth. Every single Jew left Egypt with 90 donkeys worth. 90? Imagine what that means. How many 24-foot trucks that means of goods that they left Egypt with. Imagine.
Now, wait a second.
One second. So
what
what did Moses get? What?
He didn't leave with 90 donkeys.
According to some opinions, they actually left with 90 donkeys.
90 donkeys per person?
Per person.
It's not even possible.
It's impossible. Well, nothing's impossible.
We're talking about a couple of 100 million donkeys.
600,000 people.
Yeah. Well, 600,000 men between the age of 20 and 60. It's not including men who are older, men who are younger, and the whole female gender. And then you also have the Egyptians who tagged along with the Jewish people to leave Egypt.
Do they make those
Maybe
Egyptians who
1 billion
tag along clean up after the donkeys?
Maybe.
1 billion.
But either way, what we see here is an incredible thing, is that Moses, God doesn't let anybody lose out. Moses is doing the right thing. You know what Moses got as payment? You remember that there was a first tablet that Moses got, set of tablets that Moses got and broke. Those went into the ark. What happened to the second set of tablets that Moses chiseled out? In Charlton Heston, in the Ten Commandments, right, you just see him chiseling out the first one. But that's not true. That was the second one that Moses chiseled out. So that was sapphire. What happened with all those chiseled pieces? God says, Moses, that's for you. You didn't get, when all the Jews were collecting all the riches from the Egyptians, you didn't get anything, right? Because you were busy doing the right thing. You were getting the bones from the bones of Joseph. You were getting the shittim wood that was going to be needed for the future building of the tabernacle. You're not going to miss out. What did he get? He got all of the pieces that were left over from what he chiseled out from the tablets. All of that sapphire, that was Moses. And according to the Midrash, Moses became far wealthier than anyone just from those pieces of sapphire.
So where could he spend it in the desert?
True. Where can he spend it? It's another problem. Right? Then what could the Jews do with it?
Nothing.
Right? Nothing. You're in a desert. What are you going to do? You had the manna. For crying out loud, what do you need? You're going to go buy milk? You had manna. What are you going to buy? Meat? You had manna. Right? What are you going to need? Right? Whatever you needed, it was taken care of. So they had it for when they entered the land of Israel. So, my dear friends, thank you very much for joining us online. That was our short little thought on this week's Torah portion. And you're all welcome to join us here at the Torch Center every night of the week, every afternoon of the week, every morning of the week for something exciting. And if there isn't a class, you know what there is? There's beautiful, delicious espressos. Right? And our incredible new espresso machine is, of course, there's regular coffee all the time, but that espresso, a delight. My dear friends, thank you for joining us. Have a terrific evening and an amazing Shabbos.